Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started here. We may get a few people either wandering into the room or jumping into Zoom, but might as well start the show. Do we have any visitors in the room? Or are we just all focus folk?
The room has no visitors.
Most unfortunate.
Yes, that's true.
And I don't see any of the folks that I invited or who filled out the form on the website in Zoom here, so we shall bypass that section. The only thing I want to mention, the program that was scheduled for next month was going to be street photography with Jeff Tidwell. That's been moved to August due to a conflict he had with scheduling. Instead, we are going to have Doug Johnson present to us next month. And either he's going to do a program on low light night photography or keeping your photography fresh. As soon as Kyle gets information back on that, I'll get it updated on the website and into the newsletter. And of course, our competition next month is open. So, so I expect to see 50 or 60 images instead of the 32 that we have this evening. I know that sound is kind of an odd thing, kind of an esoteric thing, but I think you'll see the images presented tonight. A number of them are very good as far as indicating, evoking that sound going off in your head just by looking at the image. So,
may I ask a question?
You may.
Is Doug Johnson the same Doug Johnson from the Rocky Mountain School of Photography in Montana?
I believe so.
Oh, cool.
I'm not positive, but I think he is. Yeah, because if I remember, he did a presentation for us last year on macro photography, and as I remember, he is in Montana, so there's a real good chance. I would have to pop on the website. Sorry?
Tall guy with thinning hair and a nice smile.
Yeah, he's a super nice guy and very knowledgeable.
Yep.
Yeah, it'll be good to have him back.
So, Carl, are the 32 images acoustic or digital?
They are going to be digital.
I did chuckle there.
Yes. Yes, the only acoustics are from you folk. So the definition that we had for our sound competition was this is a photo competition, not a video competition. Sounds are physical things that can't be captured in a photo, but the perception of sound can be represented in a photo. For instance, if you walk by a coffee shop and see people laughing inside, you can't hear them, but you know they are making joyful sounds. So capturing that perception with images that show, quote unquote, the sounds that make life wonderful is what we were looking for. And I believe we got some very good examples. Our judge this evening, Larry Treadwell. Larry has judged for us before, a couple years ago, and he is back again, kindly volunteered to do this sound competition. When I first contacted him, he said, "That sounds pretty interesting. Let's go for that one." Let me give you a little bit about Larry. He lives in South Florida and is an accomplished nature and wildlife photographer who has twice been selected as a U.S. National Park Artist in Residence. He's also conducted a lecture series on photographing the Florida Everglades at the U.S. Botanical Garden in Washington, D.C. He's a member of PSA and teaches an online course titled Creating Images for Competition. He serves as a moderator for 2 digital dialogue groups and judges numerous photographic club monthly competitions, as well as serving as a judge for international competitions. As a member of the Florida Council of Camera Clubs, Larry has regularly served on a panel of judges for the semi-annual State of Florida Photographic Competition. For individuals or groups who visit South Florida, he conducts photographic excursions to birding areas and the Florida Everglades. And of course, reservations are required for that. Larry, was there anything else you'd like to add to that or anything you'd like to say?
I think you did a wonderful job with that. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for providing me with all those kind words to say about you.
Works out well that way.
Yes, indeed. I don't know if you remember from last time, but the way that we work it is that we'll have Bob will be showing images tonight in Lightroom. And as the image comes up on the screen, I will announce the title, and then we'll go for your commentary on the image. You'll give a grade between 6 and 10, and we'll continue on through all the images. We'll stop every once in a while when we have 6 or 8 images that score a 9 or a 10 and talk to the image makers and get their input on their images. And Bob, if you're ready.
Before we start, could I make a couple quick comments about what I'm going to be doing?
Yep.
Okay. When I got this challenge, we found out what I was going to be doing sound. I made it a point to take some time to research sound. I mean, I kept looking at images from other competitions and do I hear anything? What's it all about? And I kind of went around and try to get an idea of what you could do to create sound in images. I never like to go into anything blind, so I put some time and thought into going into that. But I thought to talk about what I see when I judge might help you. And I have a quote that I love to use, and it says that a photographer is someone who photographs ordinary things in extraordinary ways. And I think there's a key in there somewhere. We all have cameras. We all pick up our cameras. We go out and take pictures. But do we look at trying to create something unique? Or are we just taking a picture? Are you exploiting your gear, using it to its greatest advantage, pushing the limits of what you can do? Or are you just going outside and saying, I'm here, there's a scene in front of me, I'm going to take a picture? So I think if you think about how you're going to take a picture, and that's at the heart of that competition course that I teach, but think about how you can make the image to a viewer, make them feel, make them see what you see. And that I think is key to it. I also think the idea of light matters. One of the things that judges look for a great deal is how light impacts your image. Most people take a picture and use light to get exposure rather than using light to be creative. And it's the creative image, the one who uses light in a unique way, that stands out and will get the higher scores almost every time. All right, enough of that. Let's talk about your pictures.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Larry. We appreciate that. I'll ask that everybody on Zoom please mute so that we're not interrupting Larry as he goes through his commentary. And our first calibration image here is just to show people, we know that Zoom kind of reduces the saturation sometimes, makes things look fuzzy sometimes. The folks in the room are looking at a TV. So if you look at this and you notice that something is off a little bit, know that all the rest of the images that you're going to be looking at this evening will be off that same amount. All right, let's start with image number 1. All a buzz for Her Majesty.
Okay, when I looked at this, and the first thing I looked at with all of these images was to get an idea of what am I hearing when I look at the picture. And that's what I started out with everything for. So when I looked at this image, first off, I asked myself, do I hear bees? In my warped little mind, as I try to work this out, I don't think the sound of the bees comes into the feel of this picture. Bees make sound by movement. It's their wings and their legs and the action. So somewhere in your image, you've got to show those bees doing something. Maybe if you got some wing movement, if you used a slower shutter speed and played around a little bit and try to get some action to go with it that would help magnify sound. Okay, whatever. So that's a thought that might go with it. I think the image is technically sound. It's sharp, it's well exposed. It's a classic fill the frame image, and all that I think works out very nicely. I think the one thing in the image that stands out is that yellow spot over on the left third. It's on the top of one of the Bs, that bright yellow blob. To me, that takes something away from the picture. It doesn't add anything, and I think it takes away something. And in that sense, I think it's a drawback to the image. And with those thoughts in mind, I left this as an 8.
Letting off steam.
All right, I like the conversion. Whenever you make a conversion to monochrome, one of the first things the judges will look for is the tonal quality of the image, going from true blacks to true whites and trying to get that range of tones in there. I think the conversion on this is really done very nicely, so you did quite well. I'm looking for sound in this, and I see a lot of steam. I don't feel the train making sound other than the little whistle blast coming from the far right column of smoke, steam, whatever it happens to be, coming off on the backside of the train. That is the piece to me that offers some kind of sound, but I don't think there's enough sound being generated in that. And I don't feel like the train's moving, so I don't get that clickety clack or any of that kind of stuff that goes with it. So I think the image is quality. It's technically decent, but it doesn't generate vast amounts of sound. What I like in this, oh, before I do that, over on the right-hand edge, you see that little shed right on the edge of the picture? In terms of composition, that little shed's not helping you any. You might slide that edge in just a little bit and remove that so the image has no distraction in anywhere else at all. And because there are so few distractions, it all fits together very nicely. I made this one a 9.
Barking for treats.
I'm with you. I hear the dog. I can see the dog barking. I think there's a couple things in here that kind of detract from that a little bit. And I think it's your camera angle. The dog's mouth is open, but we'd see a better mouth open if we had more of a profile. And if you could get your camera angle around a little bit more to the right, and you got more of a profile in that, so we get the full open mouth, and we get a better view of his face. And with animals, eyes are always important, and you'll see that in another picture that I'm going to talk about. But getting the eye to show, getting the mouth to be more open, so it's visually more open, would add a lot to the picture. I think you've crowded the dog into the frame. There's not much space to the right, at the top, to the left. You got plenty of space at the bottom, but the other sides, it feels like he's kind of crammed into the picture and doesn't have enough space to really live and operate. And so I made this one an 8.
Roaring silence.
I think your title sums up your picture and the way I looked at it. What I see in this picture, I see the plane and I see the trails trailing up behind it, and I like the upward thrust of them, the way you put it. The composition, I think, works very nicely, and I like the starkness of it, just the two colors. I'm real big on minimalism and not getting too much clutter, and I think you did that very nicely. But in this case, I live in South Florida. We got 2 airports that aren't very far from me, and my skies are filled with airplanes to the point I don't even bother to look up. And that's what I see in this. I don't hear the plane. When they get that high and they're that far up, you don't even know they're there. And so I think, to me, the lack of the feeling of sound left this image as a little bit lesser than some of the other ones we'll see. So I made this one an 8.
Riding the wind.
Riding the Wind is a nice title. I mean, the bird is nice. This is a good, solid, technically well done image. It's sharp enough. It's exposed properly. I like what you've done with the background and fading it all away. All that makes the bird stand out. I even like the wing position. I think the bird helped you with the little curl on the far wing to get a little bit, and you did a nice job with the shadows on the underside of the upper wing. But again, I don't hear the bird. Most birds fly in silence. And without something to generate the feeling of sound, I don't see where this really fits the category we're trying to look at. I really like the elongated panoramic style exposure framing. It accentuates the bird. I think your composition works really well. It's one of the more pleasing images in that sense, but it just doesn't generate a feeling of sound. And so I'm going to leave that one as an 8.
The rain in Spain falls mainly on this lane.
Very nice. Okay. This is about rain, and again, we're looking for the sound of the rain. In photographs, the eye always goes to what is light and what is bright. And you've got two areas in this image that show light and bright. You got the rain on the street, but you have that huge area dead set in the middle of the picture at the top where you have that faded, washed out sky. Right? That sky area is drawing me away, and it's pulling me away from the rain on the street and making me come up and look at the top of it, especially since it's framed so nicely in the picture. The buildings frame it, the tree points to it, you got all that stuff working for you. So I'm moving away from the image that you want me to look at. If this is about the rain and you want me to hear the rain, then bring me to the rain. I think you could easily crop down on this image and get rid of some of that top. You can get rid of that whole light spot at the top and just bring it down to that top of the tree where it's green. And that would shrink the picture and bring the focus back into the rain on the street and make me concentrate on that. And I think that would make the image a lot stronger. It would also, by cropping down from the top, get rid of that black triangle in the upper right-hand corner. And those two little balcony pieces that stick out over on the right-hand edge. You should look for cleaning up the composition, do what I refer to as edge patrol, and look around all the edges of your picture and make sure there's nothing there that distracts from what you want me to look at. Items on the edges of pictures draw your attention, especially if they're lighter than what's behind them. So those kind of things draw away a little bit. I do like the rain on the street, and I like the action that shows with that, and I made this one a 9.
Rescue mission.
I think the thing that makes this image work is the shutter speed that you used. Because in this case, you can freeze those blades, and then the helicopter becomes a statue, and it's just there. I know this helicopter is in the air. I know it's operating and being used because the propeller, the blades at the top are spinning. There's a blur to the blades, and that blur brings the connotation of activity, and the activity for a helicopter is horrifying noise. It's just constant. So I think that's the noise. That's the sound that carries the image. I like the upward angle of the helicopter. And I think the use of it's not your fault, but it works out. The red for the outfit and the red underneath the helicopter help pin the eye to the center of the picture. If you'll note, your background and your helicopter are both kind of whitish, grayish, or whatever. And those red pieces in the center, red being that very, very powerful color focusing point, draws the attention in and makes me look at that and pins me to the helicopter. So I think this one made it up to a 9.
Totally vintage.
This image I've looked at over and over and over again. It's technically pretty sharp. I mean, the exposure is good. It's sharp. It's physically sharp, but you got a little bit of softness in the music. And since that big white sheet, remember the eye goes to what's bright in the picture. So the eye is going to go up to that sheet of music. And again, you're trying to talk to me about sound, but you're drawing my attention away from the keys and pulling it up to the music. And so you're making me think and look in different places. And the other thing that struck me with this, and everything in an image matters. And if I look at this piece of music and I can, you show me the title of it, and the title is As Time Goes By. It's a quiet, relaxing, restful kind of sound. And if you had, and I don't have the right song to go with it, but if you're doing something like the Boogie Woogie Boy from the World War I era, and you get the keys pounding, or you get something honky tonk in there, where you're showing sound, you're making the sound more pronounced, and that would lift the image. But with the distraction of the taking me away from it, it doesn't work quite as well. So I made this an 8.
Summer's roar.
Just for the heck of it, what's the first thing you see in the picture? I mean, when I looked at this, the first thing I saw was that buoy in the water, that white thing right in the center. That's the center of attention. It's well framed. You set it up right there. It works perfectly. All right. So that's what I look at first. But you want me to hear the boat. So it's now I have to look, the boat has to convey the sound, the roar of the engine, the slapping of the hull in the water, all that stuff would be something that would add to it. So perhaps if you changed your composition a little bit, A, you got rid of that buoy. B, you move the boat a little bit off center, so it's not dead weight, because by moving it to the left, you convey the feeling of motion. Motion with the boat would generate sound. If you got that water to be maybe a faster shutter speed to get some of the more of the spray in the water to make it stand out. You're trying to look for things that are going to show the roar of the engine, and that has to come from the action of the boat and the position and posture of the boat. Maybe if you got the bow up a little bit higher, if you had some of those engines showing with the power coming off of that, something to add rather than just make it kind of feel static, because the static feeling takes away from the sound. So this came out as an 8.
Happy drumming.
Okay, we're going to do it again. What do you want me to hear? You want me to hear the drums. But when I look at the picture, what's the thing I go to? I mean, I'm gonna see that hand, and I'm gonna see that little happy face. And the hand and the happy face are static. If you played with that shutter speed and got the drumsticks partially blurred, got the action of showing the sound, then you elevate the quality of the picture and you give it more meaning. But what you're showing me, the things I see in the picture, I see 3 things when I look at this picture. I see the tattooed arm in the front, but that's the biggest thing in the picture that's bright. So that stands out. The white face on the drumstick, that stands out. And that white light on the upper corner at the top on the right. That white light up there, it doesn't need to be there. You can crop that down, eliminate that white light, and the picture instantly gets better. You might try fading that arm, making it a little bit darker, so it's not quite so bright that you're taking me away. Note the brightest part of the arm is on the edge of the picture. My eyes go into the light and the bright, so I'm going to go from the hand to the elbow, and you're drawing me away from the drum, and the drum is what you want me to look at. That's where you're going to get the sound from. So it's your composition and your use of camera technique that weakens the picture. And so this became an 8.
Not for backseat dogs.
Where's the sound in the picture? When I look at this, I mean, the closest I get to sound is the open mouth of the guy. But what I'm looking at is you got 3 elements here. You got the dog who's bright, you got the hand in the lower corner that's bright, and you got the open mouth in the center. While the mouth generates sound, the composition draws away from it, because that face is one of the smallest elements in the picture. The cup is much bigger and bolder. The dog is bigger and bolder. And I'm missing the connection. It's the composition that is dragging the image down, not so much this. I can see some sound, but the composition isn't magnifying it. So this one was an 8. Okay.
Open spigot.
When I look at a waterfall, where's the sound? If you go to a waterfall, where is the sound? What's creating the sound? Is it the falling water, or is it the water hitting at the splash pool at the bottom where it hits the rocks? That's where the noise is. But you showed me just the water tumbling down, and it doesn't go anywhere. You cut off the sound mechanism, and you also have all this space at the top of the picture that is doing nothing to add to it. It's not magnifying sound. It's not helping the image of the waterfall, other than the fact that you're drawing me away from the waterfall, because the top of it is the bright colors and you got the sky at the top, and none of that is adding to the image. It's the composition and the way it's put together, and the fact that I don't have that splash pool. I would strongly suggest that you pull this down, and I would crop all the blue white areas from the top, get it down to that horizontal section of leaves in the center, because anything above that isn't adding to the picture. And you could take that space at the top and add it to the bottom and catch the splash pool, and you'd have, I think, a lot stronger picture. I'm going to give this one a 7 because I hope you would go out and redo this, change that composition, and make it a little bit stronger.
Riding the fastest horse.
All right. Now we got some excitement here. There's a lot of neat things that I like in this picture. I feel that I'm at the carnival. I feel the carnival because of the horse. I feel the carnival because I recognize what's in the background. I feel the carnival because of the joy in her face. Carnivals are noisy, and the joy on her face, the motion using the slower shutter speed, getting a little bit of blur in this, shows that this merry-go-round is in action. It's moving, and as it's moving, it's generating the sound and the noise. Your colors are wonderful in this. I like your blues and your yellows. Those are excellent complementary colors, and notice they're scattered throughout the image. Those are nice pieces to add to it. So you've held my attention with that, and that little bit of red on the horse's mane in the front helps me anchor on her. So you use those colors to strengthen the image and give it more power. I think this is a very dynamic and a very interesting image. I am not deducting for this, you'll see in a minute, but I'm going to offer a little suggestion. When you sit and look at this picture again, check the lower right-hand corner, and there's that white line in the bottom corner. You can clone that out without any trouble at all. And while you're at it, go to the left corner and remove that little black shadow. You don't need that there. It's not helping anything. You can leave both of those off. As I said, I'm not deducting for it. This one's a 10.
Brass vibing.
This is one I labored over for a while. I like the conversion. You have very, very strong blacks. You have good, strong whites. That works very well. I like the face of the man. It's the face of the man that carries the image. Those puffed cheeks, all that shows that he is actively forcing air through the horn, generating noise. There is noise coming out of the other end. I kind of wish it gave me just a little bit more of that horn on the front end, so I get the rest of the noise coming out of it. I think the contrast to it, the starkness of it, the strong black and white conversion, and the fact that you've channeled everything to frame around his face, I think that all works very well. And I made this one a 10.
Meadowlark belts out a melody.
The bird's open mouth and the fact that there's no food in it, that brings the feeling of making him speak or making him call, whatever you want to say to it. That, I think, adds to it. I think what to me, what hurts the image the most is the fact that you've made it look very artificial and very fake by putting such a terribly heavy vignette all the way around the outside. That vignette, I mean, yes, it channels the eye to the brighter part in the center, but you've taken a natural scene and made it look extremely artificial. And because of that artificial feel to it, and the fact that you've done that intentionally, and it weakens the picture, this one ends up as a 9. The sound is there, the composition is not.
Go, Johnny, go.
I like this picture. I think here, I know this woman's yelling. I can feel this woman yelling. And it's her body posture, it's her facial expression, it's that big open mouth that is there, the hands, the fact that she's down low to the water, all that says, yep, she's yelling, she's screaming, she's shouting, it's all carrying it out. But then when you process this, you've got all of these, it's overdone. You've pushed it to the point where you have all of these big blocked shadows, the pants on the woman on the left, the skirt of the woman who is right over the shoulder of I'm assuming it's the coach. You have a boy on the upper side who's another blocked shadow. The contrast in this is pushed so hard that you've taken away part of the feeling of this. And while the sound is impressive, the processing of this, I think, has weakened it and dragged it down. And that's the reason it's not a 10. I left this as a 9 just because of the fact that it was processed too heavy-handedly.
Okay, and Bob, after this one, let's stop and talk to the 9s and 10s. We've got a decent number of them, but this image is, you can feel the noise.
Yes, you can. That's one of the first things that I thought of when I looked at this picture. There are several things in here that work really well. One, it says this is Blue Angels. I mean, that's what it is. That's what it says. Those planes are just plain obnoxiously loud. We have an air show here. When they practice, they run over my house for every day for a week. I know the Blue Angels. But what I like about this is the upward angle of the plane. The plane is elevating, the plane is rising, and the rising plane needs those engines to be revved up. I look at the fact that the clouds behind it are streaking clouds, right? They streak because the plane is roaring past them, and I can feel the plane going by them. But the thing that sold me, the one thing in the picture that sold me and made me go, that wins. And that is, if you look right above Navy and right above that wing, you see the airfoil, the currents of the air where that gray streak is elevated over it. That's being done by the flow of the air over the wing. And that motion of that air screams out that the plane is roaring and rising and moving. And that's the sound that echoes powerfully. That's why it's a 10.
All right, so we're going back to letting off steam. This is from Dan Greenberg.
Yeah, that's a picture that I took in. His face is out. Oh, Alamosa. There we go. Which is Rocky Mountain. I forgot the name of the railroad. It's now there. It's the Rio Grande and Scenic Railroad, basically, that Todd and I went on. 13 years ago already. And this was the kind of thing that it was extremely noisy. The steam hissing out was extremely noisy. The engine was also very noisy, but I do appreciate everything you said. So thank you very much for your comments.
And this is The Rain in Spain Falls Mainly on This Lane from Kyle Durlam.
Thanks, Larry, for your feedback on this. I love Edge Patrol. I wrote that down. I really, really appreciate it. It's a great comment, and everything was really valuable. But yeah, this photo was 2 weeks ago, yesterday in Spain.
Well, and hopefully that wasn't the weather for your whole trip there.
About 2 days out of 8, so not too bad. And hey, I was still out.
There you go. Rescue mission. This is from Oz Fenninger.
Yeah, so this was taken in Norway. We were on a ship and they brought this helicopter in to test out a rescue mission. So it was actually a simulation of a rescue mission. So that's about it. Thanks for your comments.
It's an excellent image, Oz.
Thank you.
Riding the fastest horse is Mark Rockkind.
I took this in Taos a few years ago and used a technique I'd never tried before, which is moving the camera. There was one compelling girl and I tried to get her. And the great thing about trying to do this on a merry-go-round is you get lots and lots of chance. Don't like a sports car race or airplanes in the sky. Every time she comes around, you get another chance. So I think I don't remember the shutter speed, but I don't want to be too fast. And the camera was moving, so they just got, you know, when I saw this, I said, wow, that actually worked.
Yeah. One of the things I didn't say that I really like in this picture is I know that thing that she's on horse that she's on is going up and down. All right. And the fact that you got her with space above her and below her so that she doesn't merge with anything else. She's separated completely. And that really helps this image too.
Now, one thing we do in these competitions, we don't let the judge see the other 17 shots.
That's perfectly all right. And I heard you talk about the fact that you took a bunch of pictures. I go to carnivals all the time and do the same thing. And all you're looking for is one. So the rest of them, you throw them away, who cares? And you never did them.
Thanks for all the nice words.
Yeah, thanks for the really nice image, Mark. This is Brass Vibing from Cecilia Zapata.
Hello, Larry, thank you so much for the comments and the feedback. This photo was taken at a Mariscos Mexican restaurant here in Aurora. And I don't think the image even comes close to defining the amount of decibels that were in that place. It was loud and we were sitting pretty close to the band. It was I think it was a 15-piece band.
Oh,
But yeah, again, thank you for the comments.
Meadowlark Belts Out a Melody is from Terry Hanford.
Thank you for your comments. So a few days ago, I was thinking this was an open competition, and suddenly I looked at my sheet and it said sound. And so I was going through my lists of things, and this was a picture I'd actually sent to a bunch of friends, and just as a fun picture. And then I heard you were the judge, and I said, oh, I wonder if it's too late to pull it out because it's a bird on a stick. You know, a wildlife specialist is going to see a bird on a stick. So I want to thank you for a 9. I appreciate that.
well, it's sharp and it's good. But when I looked at this picture, it reminded me of a picture I've seen before. And I want to throw this thought to you because you have cold weather out where you are, not where I am. But I saw a picture of a red-winged blackbird in a similar position, except that it was on a cold day and his breath showed coming out of his mouth as a foggy mist. That breath coming out of the mouth made the picture amazing. That's something you might want to think about trying to work on.
I'll look for that bird.
Go Johnny Go. This is from Bill Williams.
Thanks for the comments on the contrast and whatnot. I can see what you're saying, and I'll actually go tune those down. I went to a swim meet thinking, you know, to photograph for this particular competition, thinking I was going to photograph the swimmers and all the splashing and whatnot and activity. And come to find out, as I was standing there, most of the noise was not coming from the swimmers, but it was coming from the audience. And that's when I spun around and saw this lady there. And I said, well, that's where the noise is. Thanks much.
Surely.
And you can feel the noise from Todd Lytle.
I made it on. After all, I'm in my hospital room. I had a minor procedure today, people, no big deal. And you can send flowers if you'd like, but gift certificates would be preferred. I shoot the Blue Angels usually once or twice a year. This was from last October. They did an air show in Grand Junction, Colorado, and this is the number 6, what they call opposing solo. He's the number 2 solo last year. The same pilot, Griffin Stengel, this year is the number 5, which is the lead solo. And then he'll go back into his military retraining. But these two guys, the number 5 and the number 6, are just they're insane. They're always doing the craziest stuff on the planet.
Thank you, Todd. And yeah, you noted in the notes that this guy's call sign is Push Pop.
Yeah, Push Pop. All pilots, all Navy pilots in particular, all Blue Angels have very odd call signs, and it takes me a while sometimes to find them out because it's usually kind of an inside joke. The last guy who was the number 5 was a guy whose call sign was Whiskers, and he was a black gentleman, and he had a good beard, but it had nothing to do with whiskers. Apparently had to do with something that he owns cats. And this guy's Push Pop, and apparently Lieutenant Commander Griffin Stengel is Push Pop because he won some ice cream eating contest.
There you go.
and these things, I mean, they stick with you your whole life.
Exactly. Yeah.
Your call sign never changes. They give it to you when you go to flight school, and you're Push Pop forever.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and I hope you're recovering well. We'll be sending great thoughts your way.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. All right, back to the show. We have Notes in the Dark.
Okay, it's kind of an interesting blend you put together with the color at the top and the monochrome at the bottom. I think it calls attention to the guitar and the bathtub at the top. Again, it's composition that is the downfall of what I see in the image. One, it's all the girls at the bottom, or the way you've chopped them off. You just eliminated body parts by chopping them up that way, and it makes them look very broken and very out of place, and it doesn't contribute very well to the picture. The fact that they are so calm, so quiet, I think takes away from some of the sound that goes with it. And while the guitar in the bathtub can generate some noise, I just don't feel that it carries enough noise along with the weakened composition. I have to leave this as an 8.
By the Lake.
Okay, once again, I'm looking for sound, and what I get is I guess the lapping water coming in along the side of the lake. And that's there. I grant there's sound in that, but I think, again, we still are taking a photograph, and I find this as a very ordinary, a very average picture. There's nothing dramatic, nothing exciting about the picture. It has that it generates to me the feel of a snapshot rather than something that a photographer went out and created and made a picture out of. And I think that's the word that I like to hear with photographs, is that you don't take a photograph, you create one. It's up to you to put this together to make it work, get me excited, something that will be memorable. And I don't hear enough sound, and the image isn't memorable enough. And so I'm going to leave this as an 8.
Zooming by.
Again, I tried to find a way to get this to show me sound. And I catch the motion there's a spin to the tires. There's a little bit in that, but other than that, I don't get a lot of motion. I know the background's blurred, but I think the background, if you wanted to show motion, again, you've put the car in the center of the picture, which makes it stagnate. And when you hold it, you give it that still feeling, you're taking away from the motion. The motion is what will create the noise of the engine, and the pieces just don't, they aren't all the pieces necessary aren't there. If you had maybe a greater blur, a greater horizontal blur, if you panned it a little bit more, if you had the car perhaps off to one side just a little bit, so I get the feeling of it's coming across, that would help generate the sound and generate the feel and give it more excitement, and bring it up. And those kind of pieces together, I think, would make it work. So I left this as an 8.
I told the person who submitted this that I hated that I had to try and read this title, but here we go. Grr. Arroo!
Yeah, if I kick the dog at my foot right now, we might get a better sound. But no matter what you do with this thing, there's noise. There's noise. I can hear the yelp from the one at the bottom. I can hear the growl and the snap from the one at the top. I can hear those teeth about to gnash together. You've got the brightness of the dog at the bottom, making me pull in. Eyes are magical things in animals, and I got eyes in both of them. I see anger and in that attack mode at the one at the top, and I see absolute fright at the one at the bottom. I can hear the growls and the snaps and I don't know what else you could do to this thing. This is a 10 any way you want to slice it. It's powerful. It's well put together. There's a little bit of blur at the dog on the top, but I don't care because he's pouncing on the one at the bottom, or she, or whatever. And so the action carries it. It's not bad enough to be objectionable. It's a 10. Enjoy. I hope you got them all separated.
Belting it out.
Yes, she is. And this is an image that just kind of jumped on me when it popped up. She is so dominant in that frame. And because she is so dominant and her mouth is open, I know the noise that is coming out of her. That's not fair. The music that is coming out of her, right? I get it. I feel it. It's there. The posture of her leaning backward, the angle of the banjo, I like the fact that it is a banjo rather than a guitar, because the banjos, I think, have a distinctive sound to them that is more so than some of the other instruments. So you've got that, all those pieces I think fit. I think congruently this holds together very well. I struggled over whether I wanted to see more space at the top of her head or not. I know if there's nothing cut off, but I think I might prefer just a little bit of space at the top of it. But the fact that she is so tight in the picture, I think it's almost like you're trying to contain the sound. And because sound is the trick here, I think the fact that it's like she's being, as I said, contained, fenced in. And I think that helps generate the whole feeling. That's a 10.
A true pioneer of rock.
All right. I like your conversion. You have good tones from whites to blacks. I think all those worked very nicely. There is a sound of this. The dust at the bottom carries the sound more than anything else. And I'll throw in this thought. Again, what makes the sound work here is the dust at the bottom. And when we saw the waterfall picture, the fact that splash pool wasn't there, and that's where the sound was generated, and that, I think that's the difference between the two pictures. This one has the noise creating element, the other one didn't. So that's what makes this better than the other one. It's tight enough in its composition. I would I think I'd like to have a little more room on the right-hand side so it doesn't look so confined. And again, it's the composition, I think, that holds it back, and I left this as a 9.
Noisy mass flight of geese.
One of the things that struck me with this image, and again, I'm a wildlife photographer, and I'm out in all kinds of crazy hours, and the fact that you have so many of these birds, and you cannot have that number of birds taking off simultaneously without having a cacophony of sound. It made me remember an image I took some years ago where I was out in the Everglades in the dark. It was still wasn't quite morning yet. The light was just coming up, and I couldn't see a lake that was behind a row of trees. And all of a sudden, all the birds in the lake took off in the darkness, and they literally scared me out of my skin. I mean, the noise was so overwhelming, and there weren't 10% of what's in this picture. So when I see this picture and all those birds, the feel, that's noise. That's real noise. That's 10.
Circa 1924 violin melody.
Okay. I hear you, but when I hear your title, when I look at the picture, I don't hear the sound. In fact, I kept thinking about, I'm listening to the sound of silence. That's what kept crossing my mind. And I'll explain why. You have an old-fashioned phonograph, record player, whatever you want to call it, and the needle is sitting on the record. Gotcha. All that is in place. But in order for this to have sound, the turntable has to turn. And if the turntable turns, the label on the record would have blur. If you'd added the blur to the label, the motion, if you'd actually turn the thing on, everything else would be still. But the fact that you'd have that little bit of blur in the center would say it's playing, and because it's playing, there is noise, and that's what I hear. The thought process, it's not pushing your gear and using those other little features that would make it come alive. So I left this as an 8.
Highlands Piper.
I think the conversion works. That I see whites, I see blacks, and so there's enough in there to work on the tone of that. And I know bagpipes screech and make all kinds of sounds and noise, but I don't feel the noise. I mean, the trumpet player had more feeling in his face. The cheeks were more active. This guy, maybe if you were closer, maybe if you got a little more, so I could see what he's doing and make him feel like he's doing more than posing for the picture, because he's just too static. It's too still. There's not enough happening to show the generation of sound. So I left it as an 8.
1 second before the drop.
Right. That's exactly what I thought when I looked at it. And what I think would have made this literally scream is if it dropped. I mean, literally, if you made it drop. And you could have done that a couple of ways. This could have been done with a little bit of a drag on a shutter, so that you got the motion of that cubicle thing at the top starting to fall. You could have done it with camera movement, moving the camera so that as it dropped, your camera moved, and that would get the streaks and the action that go with it. And when that thing drops, that's when everybody screams. That's when all the noise comes out. But right now, you're 1 second before it happens, and everybody's holding their breath waiting. So am I. That's why it's an 8.
Click, click, click.
Keep clicking. All right. The first thing I look at is I'm looking for the sound, and I wasn't sure of what I was looking at all until I looked at the title. And I never look at titles till after I've made my decision, because I believe that a picture is worth 1,000 words, not the title. So I want the picture to tell me everything, not if you need words to explain it, you miss something in the picture. So I'm looking for, what do I see in this? And I spent all my time trying to figure out what they were looking at. I mean, I know the mountains there, but I don't know, what are they? Something, right? And the fact that these cameras are not all that noisy. And from where the camera, whoever took this picture, from where they're standing, those cameras aren't that noisy. And so I don't think this doesn't generate the sound. It generates a feeling of calm, serenity, quiet, and those feelings, when you take a photograph, I like to use the word cohesive, that everything in the picture has to fit together to deliver the message that you want. And I think there's too much in this image that is showing the peace and the silence of the wilderness, and not enough. I mean, if there was a moose out there, could be a moose on the other side of the river. Nobody's making any noise. And that's what I think is missing. 8.
Still rings.
Okay, let's look at the bell. And look, again, I'm looking for noise. I'm looking for sound. And when I look at the bell, I see several things. One, I see the rope. The rope is not taut. It's not being pulled. The clapper is in the center of the bell. It hasn't swung to one side or the other. The bell isn't tilted. It isn't swinging. It's just hanging there. Everything in this picture tells me the bell is about to be rung. But the topic is sound, and I want to hear the bell ring. And the fact that the rope isn't tight, the clapper is not pulled, all those things speak silence, not sound. 8.
Urban beats.
I'm going back to the drums again. One, I like your conversion. I think you have nice tones, and the tones work throughout the whole image. So I think that works very nicely. Again, you want to talk to me about sound. That's what we're trying to generate sound. So let's look at the picture. Half of the picture, everything on the right half, has nothing to do with sound. It's just there. It's an empty space with nothing there. There's doing nothing to convey the sound. So now I'm back to the half of the picture that's left. And the half of the picture that's left is the guy on the drums, right? But again, he's playing the drums, and drums don't generate sound unless something is striking them. So I think if you played the shutter speed game, and you let the sticks be in motion, that there you would get the feeling of sound, and it would generate more than having him sitting there. Maybe he's finished and he's just sitting there holding his sticks in his hand, waiting to move on. I don't know, but you're not selling me with the story. So lack of story, it's an 8.
Honk, honk, honk.
The flock of birds flying. I like the background. I think the birds are sharp enough. I think the exposure works out nicely. But again, I'm looking for sound. And you're telling me they honk. But remember our meadowlark with the open mouth? All right. I checked every one of those geese out. I looked at them all very, very closely, and none of them have a big open mouth. There's nobody making noise. They're just flying. And again, cohesiveness, it's got to be there. You got to deliver the message. I don't think the message is being delivered. So that's an 8.
And our last image of the evening, this is cocktail hour.
All right. Couple things I like about this. Again, the blues and the yellows are magical colors. Those colors work almost every single time. They create a feeling, they create a mood that all fits together. That's what adds a lot to the image. The joy in his face adds something to the image. And the fact that I see the liquid being poured, while it's not a lot of sound, it's clearly you framed the sound with the arm, the bottle, his hand, his face, the smile, all that goes in it. You framed a moment of joy, happiness, acting being at a bar. I get it. All that works. I have a feeling that this has an HDR look to it. And what HDR does is it does a great job of getting rid of all the shadows and making everything look fake. And so you've got the shadows dimmed, but you've got enough sound to carry the image. So I made this a 9.
Okay, we have 4 or 5 images to look at here. And this is from Joy Lindholm.
Hi, first of all, thanks, Carl, for a great title rendition there. Very appreciated. Larry, I appreciate your comments very much. These are my dogs, Basie and Django, and this is a daily occurrence around our house. So if anybody knows beagles, you know that they're not the most quiet of creatures. So we definitely, you know, if the neighbors aren't up by a certain hour, they'll be up by the time this happens. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I like this.
And Belting It Out is from David Besson.
Thanks for your comments, Larry. So this picture was taken at a street music festival here in Spokane about 2 weeks ago. And it was kind of cool because they just, 1, 2, 3 person bands would set up about every 100 feet, and it was a fundraiser. I wrestled with the crop on this, as you might have guessed, but I ended up going tight, as you can see, in part because she was playing her banjo with a bass player on her left and a guitar player on her right, and they didn't add anything to the picture because they weren't singing. And then I had a massive reflection in the plate glass window behind her, which also distracted. So thus I pulled it in tight, but she was belting it out, and had to take a lot of pictures in order to get her mouth open.
That's okay. It worked.
Yep.
Exactly. That's a really nice image.
Yeah, it is.
True Pioneer of Rock. This is from Kyle Durlam.
Thanks, Larry. I appreciate your comment about the conversion. I was worried after I uploaded it that I didn't eke out enough contrast, so I feel a little vindicated there. This is just a photo taken from my phone, a landscaping project that we were doing last month. I mean, my neighbor happened to get a rock delivery about 2 or 3 weeks prior, and I remembered how loud that was. And so when I knew this was coming to my driveway, I was ready.
Yep, it works. It works really nice.
Thank you.
Noisy Mass Flight of Geese. This is Oz Feniger.
I was hoping you had experienced something like this. That the geese make an incredible noise when they take off. So this is taken at Bar Lake State Park, just outside of Denver. And there were just hundreds of geese on the ground.
I think you're wrong. Thousands, maybe. There's so many of them there.
Anyway, so a bald eagle flew overhead and they all took off at once. I had more geese flying down below, and I thought that was maybe too much, that it would take the eye away from the individual geese.
Yeah.
So I thought the ones flying that were kind of individual, that gave me more of a diagonal. Yep. So that's why I cropped off the bottom. But
that's what sets this image apart. I've seen so many shots from down by Big Bend, and that where the birds are all taking off, and they fill the frame with birds. But what you've got here is a number of wonderful leading lines that run off into the distance, that those lines help convey more motion, more directional flow. And those lines add so much to it. I don't think I've seen an image that really does the lines like this. I've seen a lot of these kind of images, but I don't think I can remember one that has this kind of line. It makes the image memorable, and that's a goal that you want.
Yeah, diagonal lines, leading lines, that's important. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's a great image, Oz. Cocktail hour. This is from Allie Green, and I didn't see her on Zoom. She left a note here that a friend has a bar in Vilnius where we were until 2 a.m. with him serving us cocktails. It was like we were 20-year-olds again. Well, that concludes all of our images for this evening. Larry, are there any final comments, any overall commentary you'd like to make about any of the images or any specific points about ones that you've seen?
I think the 10s that I picked out really conveyed your theme. I think some of the other images are good, but when you added the theme to it, the theme added another dynamic that you had to connect to it. I think that was more doing. I think you made that allusion at the beginning when you said it was going to be a challenge to try to do sound. But if I could leave you with any thought, think about composition, that everything in your image has to work, has to fit together, and either it adds to the strength of the subject or it doesn't need to be there. And you can, by cropping it, by changing camera angles, think a lot about camera angles, and those kind of things I think will help make your images a little more interesting. I sent Carl a file for an article by an international wildlife photographer, and the reason I sent it was that this guy talked about his philosophy of taking pictures and how he goes out and uses time and patience and effort to create and make a picture. So I'm sure Carl's going to share this with you. At least he said he would not put pressure on him. But if you look at it and think about what the guy says, I think he'll help you make your pictures better. So I'd like to offer that thought. And then I want to thank everybody for having me. I enjoyed it. It was a very interesting experience. I've never done a competition on sound before, so it was something new and different. So thank you so much. I do appreciate it. That's it.
Well, thank you, Larry. We appreciate all the commentary. Mark, you were saying something?
I appreciate the seriousness with which Larry took the subject of sound. I didn't take that seriously enough in one of my photos, and I really appreciate that. I really got a lot about that because you really examined it so thoroughly. So
well, thank you.
For that.
Thank you. I try. I try to give it my best efforts.
Yeah, it was thumbs up.
Exactly. No, I think everybody would agree that the feedback that you gave and then the commentary about what makes quote unquote sound in an image should be very helpful. And the other thing that you mentioned that somebody else also mentioned that you talked about, I think Kyle, you mentioned about edge patrol. We've had one or two other judges who also talked about, checking the edges of the frame, making sure there's nothing extraneous poking in or anything like that. So yeah, it's something that we all, looking at the composition, looking at the cropping, looking at the edges, and getting rid of the extraneous stuff that just strengthens an image.
For sure.
Yeah.
So Carl, next month, you didn't set a trap for us. We don't need to have like open doors, open mouths, open eyes. It's kind of ambiguous.
No, we didn't really set a trap, but if you want to interpret open as any of those things, that is certainly up to you.
I'm gonna raid the barrel and come up with random stuff.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Mark. Does anybody else have any comments, questions, or anything else before we leave for the evening?
Just a big thank you.
Thank you very much again, Larry. Thank you to everyone who joined us and submitted images. I hope that we all got an education here and learned something a bit about our images and making successful images. So thank you all and have a good evening.
Thank you.